This is the Vevor 86-piece standard and metric tap and die set. It comes with all the tools to hold your dies and your taps. It has a wide range of taps and dies for cutting your new threads. You have your thread gauges. It just has everything you need to do the job. And I'm going to explain how to use taps and dies here in just a moment. You want to use your plastic covers to keep the moisture out. The set comes in a solid steel carrying case. Like so. Vevor. Now my objective is to make these hinge plates easy to screw the bolts into, where I can screw them in my hand. That always makes life easier when you can turn your bolts by hand. So I'm going to take 2 of the bolts out of the 4 and do them 2 at a time. Now I've put a 13mm socket on the bolts so that they won't like scrape the paint off. A 1/2-inch socket would be tight and scrape the paint off it. I'll probably do a little bit of paint damage even with 13, but that's beside the point. Now, the bolt is not coming out easy. I'm having to turn it with a ratchet, and that's precisely why I'm going to be using the tap and die set. I've got the bolts out and 2 bolts back in, holding it in place where it doesn't move around. That hinge plate is freewheeling back there in behind the holes. So I'm going to pick out my appropriate tap. Now the plastic cover over the top is hard to get out of there, so I'm using my pocket knife to pop it up and get to them. It's a tight fit, which is good to keep moisture out of them. Now I recommend spraying the whole thing with WD-40 somewhere along the line. That will keep rust from forming on your tools. As I recall, the proper tap was a 5/16 18. And I just put a bit of oil on that, and that is extremely important in this operation. Now, a lot of people in comments on another video I made about the tapping the holes was that the thread chaser was the proper tool to clean these threads out, and that's fine. You can clean the threads out with a thread chaser, but they're describing damage done by the tap, and that's what the oil is for. And I use bar and chain oil. It's pretty thick, and if you don't use oil, you are going to damage the threads. You want the tap to glide through the threads easily. I'm going to put a little more oil on it, make it nice and easy to turn, and you only turn it a little bit at a time. You make absolutely certain that you thread it properly at the beginning, or else you're going to cut new threads through the threads you have. And that's what the people talking about damaging the threads mean, is if you get the tap started on a new trajectory that that's not the original thread pitch, then it's going to cut a different thread pitch through the thread pitch you've already got, and then the threads won't be strong. So a tap has flutes, which are cuts in the side of the metal that the chunks and bits of cut metal and stuff and dirt and crap can go into the flute and be out of the threads. And when you're cutting new threads, that's where your metal shavings from cutting the threads go, is into the flutes. And you don't want to turn the tap too fast, and you don't want to go too far without backing off a little bit. backing off a little bit will put your debris and stuff into the flutes in the side of the tap. And here you can see I'm turning it with my fingers, which is what we're after, is to have, a freewheeling, threads going through there, nothing to hang up on the bolt holes or the bolts. And we'll use a die to do the bolts, and that's after we tap the holes. First we'll tap the female holes with a tap, and then we'll redo the threads on the bolts with a die. Here you can see I'm screwing in the bolt with my bare hand, no problem. Actually, you can't see the bolt, sorry about that, but I am turning it, and there you can see it's all the way in. Now I'm going to tap the other hole, put a little oil on the tap, and I've got the turning bar out of it so it's easy to handle, and I'm catching the threads. And if you don't catch the threads easily, turn the tap backwards, the opposite direction of the threads. That way it'll drop into the first thread. Same goes with the bolt. If you don't want to cross thread your bolt, turn it backwards when you put it up against the hole, and it will drop into the threads. Then you can turn it forward. And anytime with a tap or a bolt, if it seems to get hard immediately, you're not in the threads properly. You need to start over and reposition your tap or your bolt till it hits the thread properly. It only takes a partial turn to tell that you've got it wrong. Here I'm tightening up the tap holder. Once again, turn your tap slowly and not too far at any given time, and make sure to put oil on it. If you don't put oil on that tap, it's going to make those threads like jaggedy. Now we'll get this thread tapped out and then move over to the die and get the bolts cleaned up. Now I'm going to put some oil on the threads of the bolt that I've got loosely threaded into the die. I put it in the die holder, and I'm going to use my little ratchet to turn the bolt into the die. It's already got oil on it, so it's already started, and we'll give it a few turns. Now this is going in fairly easy, so I'm not going to have to back it off in this case. If it was having any difficulties turning, I would back it off, but I'm just going to put a little more oil on it since I've taken the threads in a little ways. Turn it a little more. I don't have to back it off because it's not being tough or anything. So I'm just going to run it most of the way in. I don't have to run it all the way in because it's not going to run all the way in when it's bolted up. Now I just back it on out of there, and it'll be ready to screw into the tapped hole. Now I'll take the bolt and carefully start it in the hole. Start turning it, and it turns like a dream. I can run it in with my fingers, no problem. It's no resistance whatsoever. So it's a fine job, and I'm very happy with the Vevor 86-piece tap and die set. The link is in the description, so please touch my like thingy and share my shizzle and subscribe, damn it!